Good afternoon. It is a very special day here at the great Franklin Park as we get ready to induct an incredible new class into our great Hall of Fame as a city. I want to thank our City Auditor, Megan Kilgore, the best safety chair a mayor could ask for in Mitch Brown. And I know Chief O'Connor, Division of Fires here, thrilled to have you. I know we may be joined by Council President Hardin and Council Member Remy. I'll acknowledge them. And we have two very special guests, three actually. And I may find a few more in the audience. Other inductees into the Hall of Fame. Would you help me recognize Fran Ryan, Lynn Greer, and Janet Jackson? So thank you to Bruce Harkey and the Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens for hosting this event here in the Wells Barn. For those of you who don't know or haven't been here before, this Community Outreach and Education Center was built using the frame and other materials from a 200-year-old Ohio barn. It is a great addition to the Franklin Park Conservatory. Also like to add a warm welcome to all of you and to the inductees, their families and friends this afternoon. It is events like this that remind me that this is what makes Columbus so special, our people. The Columbus Hall of Fame honors outstanding individuals who, through exemplary accomplishments, have gained recognition for themselves and have brought credit to this city. We have honorees in just about every professional field, from fine arts to football to faith. Past inductees include Amina Robinson, one of the country's most prolific artists, an Ohio State football great and two-time Heisman Trophy winner. You might have heard of a guy named Archie Griffin. In all, there are 63 people in the Columbus Hall of Fame. After our ceremony today, there will be 67. We have some firsts in this year's honorees. Our first police chief, who also happens to be this city's first African-American police chief. And we're also inducting Jackson said it's fitting he'd be the first chief in here, right? We also are inducting our first openly transgender resident. Another reminder of the beautiful diversity here in this city. My goal has always been to recognize the great, both from our past and our present. And also to make sure that not only did we induct the best and the brightest from varieties fields of service, but that this Hall of Fame look a lot more like our community than maybe it has in the past. Our inductees today in the City of Columbus Hall of Fame are the Reverend Dr. Washington Gladden, Chief James G. Jackson, Captain Lana Moore, and Kathleen H. Ran Sere. To say, absolutely. To say a few words about Dr. Gladden, please welcome Reverend Dr. Tim Ahrens from First Congregational Church, United Church of Christ. Reverend Ahrens.
I didn't get to look at your script, Mayor Ginther, but I think you added few words instead of just words, right? So thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for choosing to induct Washington Gladden into the Columbus Hall of Fame. as the 15th senior minister of First Congregational Church, United Church of Christ in Columbus, Ohio, it is a great honor to stand before you to speak on behalf of the 7th senior minister of First Church. October has been very good to Washington Gladden. This month, a beautiful plaque was placed and unveiled in Green Lawn Cemetery, which marks the family gravesite. On Sunday, he had a park named after him. And today, he is welcomed into the Columbus Hall of Fame. Not bad for a local church pastor who grew up on a farm and died 100 years ago. He's something else. The Reverend Dr. Washington Gladden was a very proud resident of Columbus, and I believe one of Columbus's greatest leaders from 1882 to 1918, while serving as senior minister of First Congregational Church. He was truly an exceptional man, and I believe, along with many historians of religion, that he was the greatest religious leader in America in his generation. He was also a very proud citizen of this great city. This honor today, 100 years after his death, is a testimony to the legacy of Dr. Gladden and his love for Columbus. I believe what was so singularly extraordinary about the Reverend Dr. Washington Gladden is that he grasped something that was very dimly sensed in his day. The gospel of Jesus Christ is not intended merely for the salvation of individuals, but also for the transformation of society. This is often referred to as the social gospel. He dedicated his life to this belief. He applied his beliefs in church and society, and as a result, he made a world of difference. Many refer to him as the father of the social gospel movement. He was a prolific writer, author, speaker, preacher, and hymn writer. The Ohio History Connection recognizes him as one of the two greatest Ohio authors in its exhibition, James Thurber, another great Columbus resident, being the other. Gladden has in that collection 35 books, 31 pamphlets, 91 articles for national news magazines, and more than 2,500 sermons. And they say that about 1,500 are still somewhere out there. Each Monday morning, the Ohio State Journal printed his Sunday night sermon on page 1. Gladden also authored one of Christianity's most popular hymns, O Master, Let Me Walk With Thee, which has been published in at least 470 hymnals of all Christian traditions. A national magazine survey identified Gladden, along with Thomas Edison, as one of two of the most extraordinary Americans that had done good for their country at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. That's amazing. While serving in Columbus, he also became a national hero. At the time of his death, President Woodrow Wilson wrote, "His death has impoverished us all," and the day after, in the Ohio State Journal, the headlines read in huge font and print, "Columbus has lost its first citizen." Dr. Gladden had a tremendous impact on this community. He built up the First Congregational Church in his 36 years as our pastor, more than doubling our membership. He was inspiring in his founding of the Godman Guild and the Gladden Community House and the YWCA, and he would be the first to tell you that stuff didn't happen without all the people around him that made it happen. He helped move the Columbus School for Girls to its present location in Bexley, where it has flourished for now more than 100 years. And he helped establish 6 churches in the Columbus area, including First Community Church and Dublin Community Church. With his close friends, Bishop Watterson, Rabbi Weiss, James Kilbourne, Joseph Jeffrey, Ralph Lazarus, some of those names you know, Gladden formed the Civic Federation of Columbus. Later, he helped form and serve as a president of a local interfaith council involving 20 Protestant, Catholic, and Jewish congregations that tackled the tough issues of their day. This was the first interfaith organization in the history of Columbus. He served 1 term on city council, and you're going to love this. He was elected with raising no money. He ran no campaign at all. At 65 years old, you love this? Are you loving this? and he was elected as an independent. Okay, let's bring down the House for this. You bet. In the summer of 1901, he conducted a survey of American cities, traveling the country to do this, and concluded that Columbus was a second-rate city, mediocre at best, and would remain so until the city cleaned up its police department. Yeah, there we go. Enforced laws on slum landlords, addressed sewage problems, and found a way to provide clean water and milk for its citizens and children. And guess what? Columbus put that stuff into action because they didn't want to be known as a mediocre city. He said, enforce the laws we have and we will be a great city. Along with Reverend James Poindexter, in the 1880s, he sued the Columbus public schools so that it would be integrated. 74 years before Brown versus the Board of Education, the Columbus city schools were forced to integrate because of this landmark lawsuit. At the turn of the century, along with W.E.B. Du Bois, he condemned the disenfranchisement of black voters and advocated for equal rights for African Americans. He supported workers' rights and profit sharing, mediated strikes in Columbus and Cleveland, and called on all sides to end the war between labor and capital, saying it was social suicide. As an advocate for women's rights, Gladden called upon his friend and former President Theodore Roosevelt to support a constitutional change in Ohio that would give women the right to vote, and Ohio led the way. Gladden revised the Ohio Constitution along with others in 1910 to 1912. As a pastor of 36 years, he worked tirelessly to seek fair wages for workers, promote integration, arbitrating streetcar workers' strikes 3 times, demanding clean water, pure milk, fair housing, as I've mentioned, and he did all this coming from very humble origins. I've already taken too long, but I did get 2 times because I had to introduce him and receive it at the same time. So let me wrap it up. You think I like this guy or what? If you're the pastor of First Congregational Church, you walk in his shadow, always. Let me close today with just a story, two, maybe 3. A story on Gladden that actually happened here in Franklin Park. In the winter of 1918, he had a stroke that paralyzed him, and he was riding around in a carriage through the park with his successor, Irving Maurer. Dr. Maurer asked Dr. Gladden how he did it, and Dr. Gladden said, "What do you mean?" through very halting speech, and he said, "How did you stand up for justice for so long and so often and so well?" Dr. Gladden paused, and through very broken speech, he slowly responded, "It was the hardest thing I ever did. Every day that I stood up for justice, it took something out of me. And I was always reluctant to speak out against injustice. But when I was silent, I would see the faces of those who had no voices, who had no one to speak for them, and then I would find words, and we would find a way forward." Those are beautiful, inspiring words for all of us, wherever we face hardship, wherever we face injustice, to find the words to speak for those who have no voice. I hope and I pray that each one of us does. At the end of his days, Dr. Gladden wrote these final words in his autobiography. "We turn our faces to the future with good hope in our hearts. There are great industrial problems before us, but we shall work them out. There are battles to be fought, but we shall win them. With all those who believe in justice and a square deal, in kindness and in goodwill, in a free field and a fair chance for every single man and woman. In their courses are fighting, and in their victory it will be sure." I present to you Dr. Washington Gladden with great joy.
I don't know about you, but every year we do these, I feel like such a slacker after we hear about these giants in Columbus history. I think Dr. Gladden did more than a decade than I've done in all my years on the earth, but we'll keep at it. Our next inductee is Chief James Jackson, who served this community honorably for 51 years with the Columbus Division of Police. And to tell you a little bit more about Chief Jackson and his story, here is Columbus's Director of Public Safety, Dr. Ned Pena, Jr.
Thank you, Mayor Ginther, for the honor and privilege of saying a few words about my personal hero, Chief James Jackson. Anybody that knows me well knows that Chief Jackson has always been my hero, role model, inspiration, and mentor. And I'll start my comments with a quote that was provided to me by retired Lieutenant Craig Stone, who went on to be OSU's police chief and is now Director of Public Safety for the University of Illinois. Us safety directors stick together. And that quote was, "I have always sought excellence in my performance, not only because it's in me to do so, but because my upward mobility opens doors for others and sets an example for accomplishment." That quote was in the Onyx by Chief James Jackson. I didn't know that he had said that. I'm just a living example of how that was applied. How so, Director? I'm glad you asked. I started on the fire department in January of 1977 under a federal consent decree, a two-list system, a black list and a white list. And my fellow classmates, the African Americans, used to tell me about Captain Jackson, Captain Jackson. And I wondered, who is Captain Jackson? 6 months later, after doing the promotional exam and scoring #1 on the list, he was promoted to deputy chief. And so the newspaper did a bio of him, and I read it and I was inspired. He was the only member of the Division of Police to score #1 on 3 promotional exams. He had been in the Marines. He joined the police department in 1958 prior to the civil rights movement, moved up the chain of command, #1 on every list. I wanted to do in the fire department everything he did in the police department. Upward mobility, opening doors for others. We used to get told that blacks weren't smart enough to pass the test to get on the fire department or to get promoted. His accomplishments neutralized that discouragement for me. So I made lieutenant. I met retired Sergeant Charlie Martin while I was in the Fire Prevention Bureau. Chief Jackson was promoted to chief in June of 1990. That next February, I was promoted to captain, and I was charged with setting up the Internal Investigations Unit. I received training by Randy Walker back there. One day, we received a complaint, and we still had the voicemail cassette players. And after listening to the complaint, we learned that it was a complaint for the police department. Well, the fire chief, Duco, also knew that Chief Jackson was my hero, and he said, "Hey, Cappy, you want to take this over to Chief Jackson?" I said, "Yeah." So when I got there with the tape, Charlie Martin, Sergeant Charlie Martin, met me, and he looked at the tape, and he looked at me, he said, "You want to meet the chief?" I said, "Yeah." So I started straightening my tie, and I went and I shook his hand about 3 or 4 times. It was 14 years from the time I joined the department to the time I got to meet the chief. And as I said before, he was an inspiration to me. I continued to move up the chain of command. I made battalion chief in 1993, became the highest ranking black on the fire department, made deputy chief in 97. And I ran into a lot of challenges, and sometimes I'd call home to my wife, "Wave your hand." I would vent. She learned more about these things than she ever wanted to know. And to calm me down, she would just say, "What would Chief Jackson do?" I was always inspired when he was involved in spirited exchanges or intense situations with how calm and focused he would remain. And that reminder would always calm me down. And so in 2002, I was appointed the first African-American fire chief. We know there was always a little bit of healthy competition between police and fire. That ended when I became fire chief because the police chief was the fire chief's hero. So the contest is over. But I was appointed chief 6 months after 9/11. There were questions, is he qualified? No big cities are prepared for terrorism. Once again, his upward mobility opened doors for others and set an example for accomplishment. In 1999, he got the police department accredited, one of the only big city police departments in the United States or Canada to achieve that accomplishment. Gold standard for police departments. So what did I do? I set my goal to get the fire department accredited. 2002 took me 5 years. In 2007, we achieved accreditation. Of the 25 largest cities in America, only Houston and Nashville fire departments were accredited. Houston's was the largest in the world, but their police department was not accredited. That made Columbus, Ohio, the largest city in America to have both its police and fire departments accredited. Fire chief, first African-American fire chief, inspired by the first African-American police chief. Huge accomplishment, model for police and fire departments across the country and around the world. My wife is a witness to that because when I retired in 2012, I was flown to London, England to present on metropolitan fire departments. Role model, inspiration, and mentor, Chief James Jackson. And I had the honor and the privilege of being at the State House in October of 2012 when my hero was inducted into the Ohio Civil Rights Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, my hero, Chief James Jackson.
I didn't know I meant so much to so many. I need to thank my wife and my family and friends and relatives. But most of all, I need to thank God because I came from very humble circumstances. My mother, who graduated from what is now West Virginia State in 1928, was never able to accomplish what she was capable of accomplishing because in her day, blacks were not able to use their education. She worked in Arlington, as most black women did, as a domestic. She earned 10 cents an hour until World War II was in its second year when she got a raise to $10 cents an hour. And that was a 40% increase per hour. She did make 10 cents an hour at $7 a week, and she got a raise to $10 a week, which is a 42% increase in pay. I, after being in the Marine Corps, wrote a letter to Columbus because I wanted to be a police officer, and I found out that you had to be 23 years of age in order to be a police officer in Columbus. I was getting out of the Marine Corps at the age of 20, because I went into the Marine Corps at the age of 17, 3 months after I had turned 17. I graduated from East High School and started in the Marine Corps. I was lucky enough, with God's help, to become a sergeant at 18 years and 3 months, which was unheard of and caused me some problems by older Marines who didn't like the idea of me being a sergeant at that young age. And that was another problem. Anyway, I took the test for the Marine Corps 7 days after I turned 23. When the list came out, I wasn't selected, so I called civil service and they said it had to do with my physical examination. So I went down to the health center to talk to the doctor, who told me that I didn't have a grip. Well, I had taken the test for the fire department where they tested my grip, and my grip was fine. I passed everything, but I moved, and I didn't tell them that I moved, so they didn't select me, and that was my fault because I was supposed to tell them that I moved. So when he told me that I didn't have a grip, I told him, well, you didn't test my grip. That time he said he would test it again, and he gave me his hand. And as he went to his knee, he indicated that I had a fine grip. So I asked him to reinstate me. He said he couldn't do that. So I had to take the test all over again, and instead of coming on in 1957, I went on in 1958 after going through the entire process a second time. I didn't know until later that at that time they only allowed 2 blacks to go into a class. And so I didn't go into the class in 57, I went into the class in 58, which meant I went from unqualified to becoming chief of police. In 1967, I wrote a letter to the chief of police requesting that we start a minority recruiting unit. In 1971, I was a lieutenant, and I was selected to start a minority recruiting unit for the Columbus Division of Police. While in that unit, I was put in charge, and I was able to find numerous cases of discrimination. And I suggested to a number of applicants who were discriminated against that they file a suit against the city for discrimination, one of which filed a suit, and that suit went before Judge Duncan, and I was the one who had most of the information, and the suit was won, and Judge Duncan declared that we had to hire a certain number of blacks. And as a result of that, a number of blacks were hired as male police officers. One of the officers who worked for me had a wife who wanted to become a police officer. So I recommended that she file a suit. She filed a suit, and as a result of that, females were required to be hired for the police department as police officers. Females were not been hired as police officers, they were hired as police women. So in 1976, I think it was, police officers were hired as females. And as a result of that, in 2012, I was inducted in the Civil Rights Hall of Fame, and I was able to tell them as a result of those two suits, blacks and females had earned in wages and fringe benefits over $1 billion because of those two suits. I recall there was more than any person that helped blacks and females earn in income in the history of the city. So I was proud of that accomplishment. All of that was because we decided to fight for rights for others. I had private problems along the way, but it was because of God's help that I was able to overcome a number of problems, one of which was allegations were made against me falsely, for which I had to tolerate a number of issues for a number of years, one of which was that I had a baby by a prostitute, and that rumor ran around for some time because of the safety director and the mayor at the time were involved in those allegations. But what they didn't know was that I had a vasectomy 17 years before that. And I didn't reveal that until finally one day I did. And they decided that they should finally reach an agreement to deny that suit. All those things were just things that God's grace allowed me to overcome the stupidity and the ill will of others. I don't want to go into anything more, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Jackson, and to the Jackson family. We know individuals don't serve alone, that families serve, and we're grateful for the Jackson family sharing the chief with the people of Columbus. Our next inductee is Captain Lana Moore. To introduce her, please welcome Karla Rothman, a longtime leader in the LGBTQ community. Karla?
I'm a little shorter than my predecessors. I want to make sure I got that. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Karla Rothman. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am grateful to be here with you today and for being asked to introduce an American hero, Captain Lana Moore. We always knew that Lana was a hero who risked her life to save the lives of others. But what we did not know at first was that she was a trailblazer who would teach all of us about loving, living out our purpose, and becoming our authentic selves. Lana is a loyal, steadfast friend to many here today. She is a parent and a partner and a brave warrior. My first meeting with Lana was at the LGBTQ Community Center over 5 years ago. Lana was very close to retirement, and she was looking toward the future. She sought to define her next chapter, and she told me how important children were to her and what a difference we could all make in the lives of children as activists. I remember thinking to myself, what a kind, sweet, loving soul. If I had a child of my own, I certainly wanted them to know Lana Moore. You know, we hear in the news every day all kinds of hatred and evil, and sometimes I sit quietly to myself and I say, where are our kind and better angels? Where are our role models? And then I look around and I see Lana Moore, and she's leading the way. Lana, a third-generation firefighter, EMT-B, with the Columbus Division of Fire, retired in 2016 with 35 years of service. She participated for 8 years on the Division Honor Guard, Marching and Firing Squad, and as an Honor Guard commander for which she received the Fire Distinguished Service Award. Captain Moore served 16 years on the Division Awards Committee, Review Board. In 2008, Captain Moore came out as openly transgender and transitioned on the job from male to female. In October of 2011, she received the Fire Service Award of Merit. She served as a chairperson of her church Board of Trustees and also Senior Pastoral Committee at the North Congregational United Church of Christ, the first trans person to hold those positions. Lana has traveled the country sharing her story and speaking on transgender issues within the LGBTQI movement. She has worked closely with Stonewall Columbus to bring GLAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, and the Columbus Division of Fire together for an anti-bullying public service announcement, and she turned the arches in the Short North purple. And also, we lit City Hall purple for Spirit Day. In addition to serving as a vice chair on the executive board of directors for GLAD, Lana has volunteered locally for Franklin County's Catch Court as a mentor for women who are survivors of human trafficking. She's a member of the Ohio ACLU Transaction Committee, sits on the Columbus Roundtable of Leaders, LGBTQI leaders, and is a board member of Bravo, the Buckeye Regional Anti-Violence Organization, and a board member of the Legacy Fund of the Columbus Foundation. I don't think you know how to say no. Lana was honored as the 2016 Grand Marshal of Columbus Pride Festival and Parade. Lana, as we honor you today, your name will be placed alongside our other honorees as one of the most accomplished and distinguished and courageous citizens. One thing that we all know, without a doubt, that it is not the last chapter you will write for yourself. It is only the catalyst for even greater moments to come. It was the great Maya Angelou who once said, "Without courage, we cannot practice any other virtue with consistency. We can't be kind, true, merciful, generous, or honest." Thank you, Captain Moore, for being our brave and courageous warrior, for being able to do it with such grace and kindness. You are our hero. Everyone, Captain Lana Moore. Oh.
Wow. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a tremendous honor to be receiving such an esteemed award of induction into the City of Columbus Hall of Fame. First, I'd like to acknowledge my fellow inductees, Reverend Dr. Washington Gladden, Police Chief James G. Jackson, and Kathleen Ransier. Congratulations to you all. Next, I'd like to thank Karla Rothman for that wonderful introduction. And I'd like to thank Kim Welter and the rest of the folks at Equality Ohio for thinking of me and nominating me. And I'd like to thank Mayor Anthony J. Ginther for selecting me. There are so many other people I can thank. Many of you are right here in this room. Some of you, I dare say, are equally or even more so belong in this Hall of Fame. There is one person in particular that I'm thinking of, and you just met him a few minutes ago. Safety Director Ned Pena Jr. Formerly the Fire Chief of the City Columbus Division of Fire. For those of you who don't know, when a member of the Columbus Division of Fire has a formal meeting with the fire chief, it's a big deal. And you show respect by wearing your Class A dress uniform. As I did so at a meeting I had with him almost 10 years ago to this day. There were two people who accompanied me to that meeting, Deputy Chiefs Sam Cox and Lisa Callender from the city's Employee Assistance Program. They were my transition team. And we were there to inform Chief Pettis of my intention to transition from male to female. This was a pivotal moment for me, not only in my life, but also in my career. I was scared. All I wanted to do was survive. I'll never forget the chief's demeanor. He was confident and friendly. I could tell that he sensed a dire sense of emergency by the look of desperation on my face. I don't have time to recall every detail of that meeting, but I will relay 3 main points. Number 1, Chief Pettis said to me, "I support you, but I can't treat you any different from anyone else. No special treatment." Fair enough, we're doing pretty good so far. Number 2, he told me I will not tolerate any harassment. That's good. I just might make it. Number 3, the third and final point that he made that day. He looked at me in the eye at the end of our meeting, and he smiled and he said, "I want you to be a success story." Friends, I was not expecting that. Up until that very moment, my thoughts were centered on merely surviving and getting through it somehow so that I could continue my career and provide for my family. Chief Pettis offered me so much more. And that meant the world to me because I knew that that man, he himself, such a success story, he knew firsthand what that entailed. He knew what it was like to have your talents as a fire officer unfairly judged and scrutinized because of something that had absolutely nothing to do with your professional abilities. At that very moment, the possibility was created for me to do so much more than just survive, that I too could be a success story. These past 10 years, I've not found the chance to tell the chief this, and I'm so thankful and honored that I have the chance to do it here today in front of all of you. Chief, Director, sorry. You'll always be my chief and my hero. And I just want to say from all my heart, with all my heart, thank you. I had support from the top down, from then Mayor Michael B. Coleman, then Safety Director Mitchell Brown, who's here today, right here. Chief Pettis at the time, Assistant Chief Warren Cox, Deputy Chief Sam Cox, Battalion Chief David Frand, and then Local 67 Union President Jack Reel. We have a saying in the fire service that leaders lead from the front. And those men were there to lead by positive example. The transition wasn't easy for me, nor was it easy for my colleagues, but we grew through it together. It's encouraging to know that the current city administration continues in this kind and uplifting support for its citizens and its employees. Mayor Andrew J. Ginther, City Council President Shannon Harden, Council Member Mitchell Brown, Safety Director Dr. Ned Pena Jr., Fire Chief Kevin O'Connor, Police Chief Kim Jacobs, and many, many more. All of them success stories in their own right. Be it known that the city of Columbus, Ohio, is a place where all people can find success. Columbus is a sanctuary city. Before we pat ourselves on the back too hard, I do want to acknowledge that like any other big city, we have our challenges and there is room for improvement. Unfortunately, there are still people in our communities that feel left behind, namely LGBTQ youth, and particularly queer and trans people of color. It has been said that a society will be judged by how it treats their most vulnerable. We can do better. We must do more. At a time when our federal government is sending out signals that transgender people do not deserve the human dignity of having their identities respected, I am proud that my city sees me and others like me and values our public service and our continued LGBTQ advocacy. We are living in tumultuous times. There's so much happening around the world and in our country. Many of us are feeling uncertain of our future and our security. So many tragedies happening on what almost seems like a daily basis. Fred Rogers once said that at times of tragedy, you should always look for the helpers. The helpers will always arrive. They are not only first responders, police, firefighters, and EMS. They can be anyone. They can be you. They can be me. Any of us can be a helper in some way. During times of trouble, we look for those helpers, and we know that there's always hope. Sorry. As this city adds my story, our story, of a transgender firehouse transition to its Hall of Fame, It is my hope that it will serve as a standing reminder that trans people cannot be erased, that we are here, we have always been here, and we will remain here, no matter how hard others try to take away our dignity and remove us from our proper place in society. Finally, to quote a City of Columbus Hall of Famer, Archie Griffin, that in our gratitude, we need not pay it back. Rather, we can pay it forward. That is what drives my advocacy work as I continue to share this success story from my city, the city of Columbus, Ohio, an inspirational story of diversity and inclusion and hope across America and beyond. Thank you.
To Captain Moore and her family, thank you for your service. Thank you for sustaining an outstanding public servant and one of our newest honorees. Our last, but certainly not our least, of the 2018 inductees into the Columbus Hall of Fame is Kathy Ransier. There is so much I could tell you about Kathy, only part of it at an event like this. But to officially introduce her, please welcome former city attorney, former judge, former president and CEO of the United Way of Central Ohio, and one of our 2017 Columbus Hall of Fame inductees, Janet Jackson.
Good afternoon. Mayor, I am truly honored that you have given me the privilege of introducing Kathy Ran Sere this afternoon. For over 40 years, Kathy has been my mentor, colleague, and peer, and most importantly, my dear friend. She has truly been a trailblazer in the Columbus community. You know, we talk about those glass ceilings that women have to break through. In Kathy's case, they weren't glass, they were concrete, and she appropriately broke through them. She has simply excelled in her chosen profession. Kathy is an outstanding member of the legal profession. She and her husband, Fred, established the tremendously successful law firm of Ran Sere and Ransier in 1976, serving a variety of clients and helping to shape the careers of numerous young lawyers they employed. During that time, they were raising their sons. After 25 years of shepherding a highly successful law firm, Kathy and Fred joined the prestigious law firm of Vorey, Sater, Seymour, and Pease. She continued to provide outstanding legal services to numerous business clients. She says that she retired from the active practice of law in 2013, but I'm still not so sure about that. Throughout her legal career, Kathy exemplified the concept of paying forward in her profession by participating in numerous legal education seminars and lecturing on a variety of subjects. She has also served on numerous public, nonprofit, and corporate boards, including the boards of Huntington Bankshares Incorporated, the Columbus Regional Airport, the Women's Fund of Central Ohio, the Ohio State University Alumni Association, and the Capital South Community Urban Development Corporation. And that's just a few. I could go on and on. Likewise, she has received numerous awards and honors, including, and for us in the legal profession, this is a biggie, the Professionalism Award from the Columbus Bar Association, and if you're an African-American attorney, the Robert Duncan Distinguished Leader Award from the John Mercer Langston Bar Association. The Greater Columbus community recognized her leadership by awarding her such honors as Woman of Achievement from the YWCA and the Community Service Award from The Ohio State University Moritz College of Law. Although I certainly admire and respect Kathy for her many, many contributions to both the legal profession and to the Greater Columbus community, I personally have always been awed by her incredible ability to focus on family, young professionals, and friends. I watched her over the years with her beautiful mother and her sisters. I've watched her, from my perspective, Fred, to be a phenomenal wife, mother, grandmother, mentor, and friend. Kathy was successful in achieving a life balance that many of her friends, and I include me in that group, and other peers simply found elusive. Throughout her career, she has also carved out time from a very busy schedule to mentor many young lawyers, especially African-American women lawyers. John Mercer Langston Bar Association had an event at 7 a.m. this morning. Kathy wasn't there, neither were you, John Waddy, but I was. I was on a panel, and when the panel was over, a young woman came up to me and she said, "I simply wanted to meet you." I think it's been a few years ago now. Kathy was somewhere with one of her beautiful granddaughters, and this young woman had on a CSG pair of shorts or something. And so the granddaughter said to Kathy, "I want to meet her." So Kathy met her. She has met with that young lawyer every Wednesday, if their schedules permit, for a couple of years now. She gives of herself, and that to me is the most important thing. I am proud to include myself in this group of special women who owe so much to our dear friend Kathy. I am thrilled to welcome my shero into the Columbus Hall of Fame.
Whew. Okay, let's shake it off a little bit. Hello. I am so pleased and humbled to be here. I want to thank all of you and give a special thanks to Janet for her kind words. Again, I'm settling down a little bit. I am overwhelmed. Janet and I, as she said, we've enjoyed a wonderful relationship for so many years. I really wish you hadn't mentioned so many dates. Don't remember any of those, please. But each year, which fascinates me so much, that, and we've talked about this recently, we've grown closer as we get older. Mayor Andy Ginther, I want to thank you for giving me this recognition and honor. I want to acknowledge that my nomination was made by Joe Nardono and Susan Tomasky on behalf of the Columbus Regional Airport Authority. I know I've got lots of friends from the authority here. I want to thank you for the nomination, and Joe in particular. I also note, and I know he likes to be very shy, but one of the other nominees was Steve Steinauer, CEO, President, Board Chair of Huntington Bank Shares, of which I've been just honored to be a board member since 2003. Thank you for being here, Steve. I was also nominated by Michael Martz on behalf of the Voorhees Law Firm, and I know there are representatives of Voorhees here. And if Mike is here, Michael's here, thank you, Michael. I also note that one of my other nominees, I just saw him, was former Mayor Michael B. Coleman, and I know you're not shy. Thank you, Mayor Mike. And also, again, Janet was one of my nominees. Again, I want to congratulate my fellow inductees for their accomplishments in service to Columbus and those that preceded them and me. This is amazingly humbling. But I always get a little personal here. I really want to give a shout out to my family, to my husband, to my sons, to my grandchildren. You heard all of them, didn't you? I think especially Michael and Freddie. My daughters-in-law, my sister. Did I see my cousin? Wow. And my dear mother-in-law. It makes this event extra special to have you here with me, and I mean that sincerely. In fact, as I was thinking about this event, it was really my family, and in particular, my sons, Bradley, Brad, and Ricky, well, actually Fred the Fourth, that inspired these remarks that I share with you this afternoon. Brad and Rick left Columbus to attend college in places that were warmer than Columbus. They certainly had a lot more sunshine than Columbus, and they even had beaches nearby. And I had to reflect, well, Fred and I stayed after law school because we had dear friends, in fact, one of our law professors that went great lengths to persuade us that Columbus was a place in which we could make a future and be successful, and really talked at length about what Columbus had to offer. And we took them up on that. Well, to Fred's and my surprise, following their graduation from college, our sons returned to Columbus to pursue their careers and to raise their families, and to be close to me. And Fred. But as I look at this, I know that there are lots of cities that are losing population, especially in this part of the country. And Columbus really is an exception to this, one of the few exceptions. Columbus is a place of opportunities driven by its growing economy and its cultural expansion. I've seen this through some of the organizations that I've had the opportunity to be close to and to serve. Columbus is a city poised for the future. It invites and welcomes newcomers. This is fed by its numerous and various educational institutions and its employment opportunities. Not only do those who grow up in Central Ohio choose to stay, but those who come here for their educations plant their roots in Columbus and help make it better. This should not be taken for granted and means that Columbus has special attributes. I arrived here at a time, it's really terrific, when doors were opening for African Americans and women. You came a little later. But it was opening, and it was gratifying. And my achievements are a direct result of and reflection of the tables to which I was invited to sit because the people in Columbus realized the benefit of different voices and different experiences. People stay because they are welcomed and encouraged to stay. Mayor Ginther, I say, and also former Mayor Coleman and all of those people here who reflect the leadership and our leaders in this city. You continue to make this city forward-looking and forward-thinking with a vision for the future that benefits all of us. As one who chose to stay, to have a career, raise a family, and to serve where I could, I am deeply honored to be inducted into the Columbus Hall of Fame. Thank you.
And to the Ransier family, we say thank you for sharing this gem and giant with the greater community. One bit of housekeeping before we conclude this afternoon. I'm going to ask our honorees to remain up front here for some photos. At least that's what Shelley told me I needed to do. And family and friends can move toward other places throughout the room for family photos. We want to make sure the families get together with their honorees and get some photos as well. What a wonderful day here in the city of Columbus, celebrating 4 remarkable people, incredible members of our community that have helped to make us who we are and who we are to be. Congratulations. Thank you, everybody.